Amane was an ugly, lonely side character in his own life. However, everything changed when he accidentally rizzed up the sad girl next door who falls for him and starts giving him the waifu treatment. One rainy evening, Amane was walking home when he spotted Mahiru, his school's beloved angel, sitting in the playground without an umbrella. She looked sad, and since the rain wasn't letting up, he gave her his umbrella and ran the rest of the way. The next day, he came down with a cold, and his best friend, Itsuki, asked how that happened since he knew that Amane had an umbrella. Amane explained that he'd given his umbrella to a sad girl he saw at the playground, prompting Itsuki to call him an idiot. Just then, Amane heard Mahiru's voice outside the class, and when he looked in that direction, she looked all cheerful like the world revolved around her. This was a contrast to the rain-soaked depressed puppy he saw the previous day, so he began wondering if someone had called her fat or something. In school, everyone revered her as an angel because not only was she beautiful and kind, she was also the school's top student and excelled at every extracurricular activity she pursued, unlike Amane, whose only form of exercise were his aggressive gooning sessions. After school, Amane went home and was surprised to find Mahiru waiting outside his door. Mahiru explained that she'd come to return his umbrella, and when she noticed that he was sick, she tried to apologize. Amane assured her that he was fine and then began walking away, but he hadn't even taken 3 steps when his legs suddenly gave out. Mahiru immediately rushed to help him, and even though he tried to refuse, she insisted as he got sick because of her. When they got into his apartment, the girl nearly changed her mind as the place looked like a pig's dream holiday location. She managed to ignore it and told him to change while she went to her apartment next door to do the same. 2 hours later, Amane woke up to find Mahiru standing over him, and she handed him a thermometer to check his temperature. Bro didn't even wait for her to leave before raising his shirt, so Mahiru immediately turned away and accused him of public indecency. However, he couldn't help but think her behavior was cute. She then left to get him some food, and when she returned with it, she served him a bowl. Amane was surprised that she could cook, and she told him that it was a skill everyone ought to have. He then ate the food and was surprised by how good it tasted, which made Mahiru feel proud. When he finished eating, he asked if she'd been sitting in the rain because she fought with her boyfriend, and Mahiru told him she was single. Amane was shocked because the girl was a 10 out of 10, the type Instagram alpha males secretly simp over and buy their feet pic for millions. Mahiru then apologized for making him sick, but he assured her that it wasn't her fault and said she could leave since he felt a lot better. Hearing this, Mahiru was surprised because every guy she ever talked to wanted to date her. When Amane said he wasn't interested in the school's angel, she asked him not to call her that because she hated the nickname. After she left, Amane lay in bed, wondering if he and Mahiru would return to being strangers again. However, the next night, while he was out on his balcony, she surprised him by speaking to him. She'd noticed he was drinking some jelly and complained that he needed something more nutritious since he was still recovering. She then told him to wait for her, and a few moments later, she rang his doorbell and handed him a container of food. The next day, when he went to return the container, she gave him another one, but he tried to refuse it. Mahiru insisted that he take it, claiming that she'd made too much food, when the truth was that she decided to feed him because she didn't think he was eating properly. In the days that followed, she gave him food almost every day, and even his classmates noticed that he looked healthier. One day, when Mahiru went to visit Amane, he answered the door on his knees, which she found sus. He claimed he tripped while cleaning, but one look at the load of dirt behind him reminded her that he had no clue what he was doing, so she took pity on him and offered to help. While they worked, Mahiru attempted to dust the air conditioner, but Murphy's Law kicked in, and she slipped on a shirt. Amane quickly rushed to cushion her fall, and instead of thanking him, she complained that his sloppiness almost got her hurt. Amane apologized and promised to do better, so they went back to cleaning. By the time they finished, they were too hungry and tired to do anything else, so Amane ordered a pizza for dinner. As they ate, Amane told her that he liked how relaxed she was with him compared to when she was at school, and said she could come over whenever. When it was time for her to leave, he asked why she had been helping him so much, especially with food, and she said she was just being a good neighbor. A few days later, Amane found Mahiru looking bummed out in a park, and when she asked why, Mahiru refused to answer. However, he noticed she was covered in fur and assumed she had a face-off with a cat and was sulking because she lost. He also noticed she might have sprained her ankles, so he told her to wait for him and returned shortly after with some ice packs and told her to strip. Before she could curse the degenerate, he gave her his jacket to cover herself. She then asked how he knew she was injured, and he said he noticed she had taken off one of her shoes. After taking off her tights, Amane could somehow perform advanced first aid on her, but joked about his garbage cooking skills. He then gave her his hoodie and pants to hide her identity and piggybacked her home. The following day, Bro had to do physical ed with his shorts, causing Itsuki to ask if he wanted to tan his Pokemon warrior. Fortunately, they got distracted by the girls who were screaming, because their prince, Katawaki, was going to run. While Itsuki complained that the girls treated him like furniture, Amane's eyes wandered to where Mahiru was chilling, and she smiled at him, but some random bots mistook it for a smile for them. That evening, Mahiru brought his usual dinner and his pants and thanked him for his help. He asked about her legs, and she explained that they were improving, but that she would have to stop any physical activity. To lighten her mood, he called her the angel who made the guys happy when she smiled, but she pouted because she hated the nickname. She wondered why the Sims were acting like she was Rihanna, so Amane had to point out how the girls act the same towards the prince. Using this narrative, she asked why he hadn't fallen for her, since she is such a beauty to behold, but Bro wasn't going to indulge her self-importance, so he decided to compliment her food. He claimed it was his favorite food, and when she reminded him to reheat it before eating, he said he would have loved to eat it fresh. This made her assume he wanted to come over to her place when she cooks, but he quickly told her it was a misunderstanding. After thinking for a while, she said she wouldn't mind as long as they split the cost of the meal. Amane said he could pay for it since he'd literally been leeching off her. He was more worried that she was comfortable with the guy coming over, so she made it clear she'd crush his family jewels and end his bloodline if he dared to make a move. She also assumed he preferred mummy milkers, unlike her miniature sweet potatoes, so she probably wasn't his type, adding that she wouldn't be talking to him if he acted like the Sims from their class. With that, they both agreed to always cook at his place and split the bill, with him paying slightly extra for her labor. When she got into his kitchen, she noticed how all his appliances were brand new because the lazy pig ate nothing but ice cream and pizza. While he sat down and watched her cook, he felt like he was looking at his wife, but her virgin radar immediately detected his creepy thoughts and told him to control himself. Once she was done, he got a taste of her wonderful creation and dug in like a neglected, starving dog. After the meal, Amane asked whether she was really comfortable with him dining with her every day. However, she said it was okay because she saw him as a charity case who needed to be saved from malnutrition. The following day, they had a test in class. When Itsuki asked how it was, Amane said it was fair, prompting Itsuki to remind him that he's part of the school's top 30 students. Amane claimed he only ranked higher only because everyone wasted their time on relationships, especially Itsuki. Just then, Itsuki's girlfriend, Chitose, showed up, and they made sure to torment the single guy with their love. Later at home after dinner, Mahiru was busy grading her scores, and when Amane asked about her score, she said it was perfect. He was shocked, but she said it was expected because she loves to read and had already covered the next year's curriculum. She said his score wasn't bad as well, and he replied that he simply does the bare minimum to keep his grades up in exchange for living alone. When he pointed out that she must really love studying, her mood dampened, and she murmured that she does what she has to. She packed her things and was about to leave when he noticed she had dropped her identity card. He picked it up and gave it to her. As she left, he started thinking about what to do for her, since he had noticed her birthday was in 4 days. The following day, he asked if she wanted anything specific, and the only thing that came to her mind was a knife sharpener. She claimed the old ones had worn out, but Amane was shocked that she was acting like a spinster rather than a Gen Z baddie with all sorts of vanity. The following day, Amane met Itsuki, the king of flirts, for some advice about buying presents, and Bro didn't disappoint. He gave him several options, from jewelry to snacks to hand cream. In a few hours, Itsuki had told his yapper girlfriend, who wouldn't stop bugging Amane about his supposed girlfriend's identity. Amane made it clear the person was simply an acquaintance, but the yapper wanted more information before she would help out. When she suggested a stuffed animal, Amane said it would be embarrassing to hold onto it in public. He then begged Chitose to accompany him, but she insisted on taking a bribe in the form of ice cream. That evening, Amane handed Mahiru the gift, but she wanted to know how he knew it was her birthday. He said he saw it when she dropped her school identification card, but she still left him hanging and said she never celebrates her birthday. He just dumped the bag on her anyway and told her to accept it as thanks for treating him nicer than a puppy. When she opened the gift and saw that it was a hand cream, she thanked him for buying something she actually needed. However, she soon realized there was also a teddy bear that made her freeze. Amane thought she didn't like it and got embarrassed, but she hugged it tight and said she'll cherish it. Seeing her smile so innocently made his heart skip a beat, so he quickly turned away. She then explained that she had never received a gift because she gets nervous when strangers give her things. He asked why she accepted his gift, and she said she doesn't consider him a stranger. Seeing her all cute made him want to pat her head subconsciously as Itsuki does, but he managed to control himself or risk getting a brain-resetting slap. A few days later, Amane's mother dropped by unannounced, and he tried to send her away almost immediately, but the woman was persistent. After she walked inside, she began scanning the place like a cop at a crime scene. What's more, she got all up in his face, and when she noticed that Amane's skin was glowing, she asked whether he was finally taking his diet seriously. Amane nervously answered that he was, while secretly praying that the woman would decide to leave. It turned out that a few seconds before he let her in, he made Mahiru hide inside his room because he didn't want his mom getting the wrong idea about them. Unfortunately, his mom wasn't someone he could easily fool, so when she asked to see his bedroom and he refused, she realized he was hiding something. Amane claimed that it was because he didn't want her snooping around, but the woman ignored his words and opened the door. What she saw was a sleeping Mahiru, and she immediately fell in love with her. Turning to Amane, she whispered that he was a sneaky son of a gun for not telling about his girlfriend. Amane assured her that Mahiru wasn't his girlfriend, but she didn't believe him. As far as she was concerned, he wouldn't let a girl he didn't like into his room, and a girl wouldn't go into a guy's room if she didn't like him. That statement caught him off guard, but he stubbornly refused to accept it and told his mother to stop trying to play matchmaker. Just then, Mahiru opened her eyes, so Amane tried to explain what had happened, but his mother walked up to her and introduced herself. Since she kept calling Mahiru Miss Girlfriend, Mahiru nervously looked to Amane for help, but bro shook his head. Seeing this, Mahiru told the woman that she wasn't her son's girlfriend, which surprised her. However, she quickly recovered and concluded that they were still in the talking stage. Realizing that the woman had put the D in delusional, Mahiru had no choice but to reveal that her relationship with Amane was about food and cleaning. Despite this, Amane's mother still believed that something was budding between them, so Amane told Mahiru to give up. Later, while they were having coffee in the living room, Amane's mother suddenly asked if they lived together, shocking them. Amane clarified that Mahiru lived next door, and the woman declared that fate had brought them together. She also said that Amane was lucky to have a certified baddie and potential waifu looking after him, even though he was the king of slops. Amane tried to get her to stop talking, but she ignored him and advised Mahiru to hit on Amane because the boy was too stupid to ever make the first move. Hearing this, Amane became embarrassed and told his mom it was time for her to leave. She didn't even argue with him and picked up her things, but before leaving, she made sure to collect Mahiru's contact info. Once they were finally alone, Amane apologized for his mother's behavior and warned that, now that she had Mahiru's contact, she would be more insufferable. Mahiru assured him that she didn't mind, as she thought his mom was pretty chill. She also said she liked how his mother called her by her first name because no one ever did, including her parents. Amane was surprised by her revelation, but since he wasn't a nosy guy, he didn't ask questions. Instead, he called her by her first name, and she returned the favor, so they decided to be on a first-name basis whenever they were alone. Mahiru then tried to return the spare key he'd given her when his mom showed up, but Amane refused to take it. He said he was tired of working as a doorman each time she came, so having her own key would spare the trouble. Mahiru then asked if he weren't afraid she'd rob him, and he said no because he trusted her completely, which surprised her. She agreed to keep the key. The following week, the test results were posted, and as usual, Mahiru placed first, so Amane decided to reward her for her hard work. That night, when Mahiru came over, she was surprised to find cake in the fridge, so she asked Amane if he was having a sugar craving. Amane explained that he'd gotten the cake to celebrate her taking first place in the test, but Mahiru didn't think it was necessary. After all, she'd always placed first. Amane disagreed and told her that all the effort she put in deserved to be celebrated. Eventually, she stopped arguing and served up a slice of the cake for herself. After she took the first bite, she noticed Amane watching her, so she offered him a little piece because she assumed that was what he wanted. Amane said it wasn't so, but Mahiru insisted that he take it, so he did and returned the favor. Mahiru ate the cake but felt shy and embarrassed afterwards because the exchange screamed couple goals. Amane then told her that if she did stuff like that thoughtlessly, it would give people the wrong impression, so she apologized. A few days later, Amane ran into Mahiru by the elevator on his way home from the supermarket. He told her that he wanted to make them lunch, and Mahiru insisted on supervising him because she didn't trust him not to burn down the apartment. A little while later, his meal of choice was ready, and after Mahiru tasted it, she told him to never touch a cooking utensil again in his life. Her review crushed his spirit, so to make him feel better, she let him eat the omelette she had made as a sample. She also promised to let him assist her from time to time so that he could learn a thing or two from a culinary master. The next day at school, Chidose pleaded with Amane to host a Christmas Eve party, but he didn't want to. The cheeky girl assumed it was because he wanted some alone time with the girl he bought the teddy bear for, and Amane assured her that it wasn't the case. After he explained who Mahiru was to him, Chidose said he had no excuse not to host the party, so he gave in. Later, after school, he told Mahiru about the party and invited her to join them, but she declined. Still, he felt bad about leaving her alone, so he proposed that they hang out on Christmas Day, and Mahiru agreed on the condition that he teach her to play video games. Days later, it was Christmas Eve, and Amane felt like a third wheel in his own house. When he complained about Itsuki and Chitose being all lovey-dovey, Chitose told him that he was showing signs of love deprivation. She then changed the subject and talked about how sorry she felt for the guys who got turned down by Mahiru. Amane said he didn't care, so Chitose started teasing him about only having eyes for his neighbor. At that moment, it started snowing, so she forgot about Amane and dragged Itsuki with her to the balcony. A few seconds later, she suddenly screamed, so Amane rushed outside to find them staring at Mahiru, who was also on her balcony. Following this, Mahiru came over to Amane's place, and Chitose couldn't get over the fact that the school's angel was the neighbor Amane had talked about. Mahiru explained that she took it upon herself to help Amane because the idiot had a proven track record of incompetence. Itsuki commended Mahiru's selfless act to keep Amane alive, and then asked Amane if the gift he'd bought with Chitose's help was for Mahiru. Amane shyly confirmed it, so Chitose started teasing them. When she stopped, Amane reaffirmed that he and Mahiru were just friends, but the couple had their doubts. As they talked more, Amane asked the couple to keep quiet about what they had found out. Chitose pointed out that no one would believe her as she told them that the school's angel was cooking and picking up after a nobody like Amane. She then started gushing over Mahiru, which made the girl a bit uncomfortable, so Amane explained that Chitose didn't understand the meaning of personal space. Chitose immediately apologized for being straightforward, but told Mahiru that she wanted to be friends with her. Mahiru agreed, which made her happy, so she formally introduced herself and casually drew Itsuki into the conversation. Itsuki playfully told Mahiru that she could come to him if Amane forgot to act like a gentleman, but Mahiru defended Amane. This made the idiot feel good about himself, and thankfully, Chitose was too interested in talking to Mahiru to throw shades at him. A few hours later, after Chitose and Itsuki left, Amane apologized to Mahiru for getting her mixed up with nutjob friends. Mahiru said it was fine because she hardly ever got the chance to make new friends. They then talked about the snow a little, after which Mahiru left to get the beef stew she'd prepared earlier. As soon as the door closed behind her, Amane thought to himself that he would have loved to keep their secret between them a little longer. However, he didn't understand why he felt that way. When she returned later, they shared the food, and Mahiru couldn't help but watch Amane while he ate. Once all the food was gone, she told him she liked how happy he looked whenever he ate. Amane said it was because her food was delicious, which made her feel happy. While he was doing the dishes, he asked how she learned to cook, and she told him that her nanny had taught her. To her, the woman's cooking tasted like pure happiness, and she didn't think she could ever recreate that. Amane assured her that she'd already done it because that's how her food tasted to him. This statement left Mahiru momentarily stunned. So when Amane asked what was wrong, she admitted that she hadn't realized that her cooking was that good. Amane was disappointed to hear her put herself down like that, so he reaffirmed that he could eat it all day, every day. The next day, Mahiru came over as agreed, and after lunch, they started playing video games. However, Mahiru kept losing, so Amane grabbed the controller to show her how it was done. When he realized how close they were, he quickly moved back and apologized, but Mahiru told him it was fine. She then continued playing while Amane watched, and since it was a racing game, Mahiru started leaning along with the characters. It wasn't until she leaned too much and fell into Amane's lap that she realized what she'd been doing. Amane helped her to sit back up, but then started laughing because he found the situation amusing. Mahiru didn't share his thoughts, so she began pouting and pounding her fists against his leg. Sometime later, Mahiru finally won the game, and when Amane congratulated her, she beamed with pride. This made his heart skip a few beats, so he quickly stood up and went to get the gift he had got for her. Mahiru was surprised when she opened it and found a cute wallet, so she admitted she hadn't thought Amane had a sense of style. When Amane asked what he'd done to warrant such shade, she told him to look in the mirror. Apparently, he wasn't always a fashion mistake, so she tried to understand what went wrong. Hearing this, Amane asked how she knew what his dress sense had been like in the past, and she told him that his mother had sent her photos. Bro was disappointed to say the least, so he argued that he hadn't changed much, but Mahiru disagreed. She said he'd let his bangs hide his features, and without thinking, she moved the hair out of his face. Seeing his face like that caught her off guard because she'd known he was handsome, but hadn't realized how handsome he actually was. Her closeness made Amane a little shy, so he tried to return the favor, only to become mesmerized by her beauty. The two then kept staring at each other until Mahiru spoke up, saying she'd also prepared a present for him. The present in question was a scarf, and after putting it on, Amane thanked Mahiru, which made her smile. Without missing a beat, he also complimented her smile, and the girl started feeling shy. She tried to hide it by pulling up the scarf and covering his eyes, but the heat in her cheeks pushed her to stand on the balcony. Amane didn't even wait 10 seconds before coming to drape a blanket over her because he didn't want her to get sick. As they stood watching the stars in that very cliché moment, Amane thanked Mahiru for not letting him starve and live in a pigsty for the past 2 months. Mahiru told him it was her pleasure to help and said she was glad she got to know him. The next day, Mahiru came down with a cold, but she stubbornly refused to rest, so Amane picked her up to take her home. Immediately, she pleaded with him to let her stay because she didn't want to be alone, so he decided to put her in his bed. After that, he spent the rest of the day tending to her like a nurse and held her hand until she finally fell asleep. When morning came, he continued his duties, and after she ate, he sat beside her to keep her company. Mahiru thanked him for taking care of her and admitted that her nanny was the only other person who'd done so. However, she never spent the night, so she was usually left to fend for herself until the woman returned. Amane couldn't help but sympathize with her, so he assured her that he wouldn't leave her side until she was well. Mahiru told him that he didn't have to go out of his way for her sake, but Amane said he didn't mind. A little while later, she fell asleep, and as Amane watched her, he wondered if he was falling for her. A few days later, on New Year's Day, Amane and Mahiru watched the bell-ringing ceremony together. Just as they wished each other a happy new year, their phones buzzed with messages, so they decided to reply. The first message Amane saw was from Itsuki, who wanted to know if Amane's New Year's Eve had been plotful. Amane quickly shot back a text telling him to mind his business, but the next moment, he got a text from his mom asking the same thing. This time, he couldn't help but blush like a schoolgirl with a crush. However, he sent a reply, saying, "No comment." The next text was from his dad, and aside from wishing him a happy new year, he asked if his dad and his mom could come by in 2 days. Amane shot back a text saying they could, then turned to inform Mahiru, but the girl's head suddenly fell onto his shoulder. She's fallen asleep, and Amane suspected it was because she was tired from all the cooking she did earlier. He gently tried to shake her awake, but she fell into his lap, and the first thing he noticed was how good she smelled. When he came back to his senses, he began debating whether to wake her up or take her back to her apartment. After weighing both options, he decided neither would be fine since he didn't want to disturb her, so he put her in his bed. In the morning, when he went to check on her, she was still asleep, so he took the time to admire and touch her face. When he tried to touch her face, Mahiru opened her eyes, but for some reason, she closed them back and began rubbing against his hand like a cat. However, when the sleep fog cleared from her brain, she realized it was Amane in front of her, and nearly jumped out of bed in embarrassment. Amane quickly explained why she was in his bed, but Mahiru still felt embarrassed and even covered her face. Her behavior confused Amane, but he also noticed that she looked adorable, so his face started tinting as well. Just then, Mahiru asked whether touch was his love language, since he always touched her cheeks like he couldn't get enough of them. Her words made him realize that she'd been awake when he touched her cheek the previous night. Mahiru said she didn't say anything because it would have been awkward, but Amane felt she should have spoken up. He reminded her that he was a guy and could have taken advantage of her if he were a degenerate. As soon as she heard this, Mahiru lay back down and covered her face, feeling super embarrassed. 2 days later, Amane's parents showed up as agreed, and Amane noticed that his mother had a suitcase with her, so he asked if she was going on a trip. The woman claimed she'd put a few essential items inside it and then walked inside to greet Mahiru. Amane and his father came in after her, so his father introduced himself to Mahiru and thanked her for looking after his son. Mahiru told him it wasn't a big deal, but Amane's mother said it was because their son was worse than a slob. Her husband jokingly cautioned her to stop throwing their son under the bus, but Amane agreed that his mother wasn't wrong. After they chatted for a few more minutes, Mahiru served them tea, and Amane's mother made a comment which led to her and her husband flirting shamelessly. Seeing this, Mahiru told Amane that his parents were very passionate, but the boy was a hater, so he said they were being unnecessarily extra. Just then, his mother asked if they had already visited the shrine to offer a New Year's prayer, and they answered no. Their response made her excited, so she asked if they would like to go with them and said she even brought a kimono for Mahiru to wear. Amane told his mother that he wouldn't go because he didn't want any of his classmates to see him with Mahiru and get the wrong idea, but his mother just told him to do his best not to get caught. Later, while she was helping Mahiru get dressed, father and son got time to chat. However, Amane was caught off guard when his father asked if he was happy he'd moved to the city. The question brought a memory to Amane's mind, but he didn't dwell on it and told his father that things were much easier for him now. At that moment, Mahiru came out of the room, and Amane forgot to breathe for a few seconds. He also didn't know what to say to compliment her, so his mother told him that he was a lost cause. However, before they left the house, Bro suddenly turned into Shakespeare, making Mahiru shy. She then asked him to come close and whispered in his ear that he looked clean and nice. The compliment left Amane too stunned to speak, so she walked away, leaving him with his thoughts. Later at the shrine, Amane noticed that Mahiru was struggling to walk, so he offered her his hand and guided her to the praying area. After they offered their prayers, they moved elsewhere to wait for Amane's parents, so Amane asked Mahiru what she prayed for. Mahiru said she prayed for good health, safety, and more peaceful days with him. Amane immediately reminded her that peace wasn't in the cards for them because his mom was a chronic pest. Mahiru laughed and told him that she actually enjoyed his mom's company, so Amane wished her all the best. The next moment, the topic of their discussion called them over to get some drinks. The next day, the duo bid Amane's parents farewell, and Amane's father reminded him to come home for the summer holiday. He also dropped hints that he should bring Mahiru along, but Amane purposely ignored them. Days later, school resumed for the new semester, and rumors about Mahiru having a boyfriend began flying everywhere. It turned out that someone had spotted her holding hands with Amane, but thankfully hadn't recognized him. So after school, he talked to Mahiru about it, and she suggested they ignore the rumors until they died down. However, she asked whether he also thought they had looked like a couple that day. Amane said he didn't think so, as it was hard to imagine Mahiru being in a relationship with someone like him. His statement immediately pissed Mahiru off, so she began listing his good qualities, leaving him feeling shy and embarrassed. When he could finally speak, he thanked her and went to do the dishes because he needed to be busy. Meanwhile, Mahiru sat, hiding her face in a pillow, because her outburst had surprised her as well. Weeks later, Chidose came to Amane for advice on what kind of chocolates to get for Itsuki for Valentine's Day. Amane's initial reaction was confusion, as he couldn't understand why she'd come to him for help, so she explained that it was because he was a guy. And guys should know what guys liked. Amane agreed, but also said his tastes were different from Itsuki's, seeing as the guy chose to date a crazy person like her. Chidose didn't think twice as she clapped back, saying that Amane's tastes were also questionable since he claimed he only saw Mahiru as a friend. Mahiru almost spilt the tea she was pouring at that moment, and Amane started wishing that he could vanish like Saitama's hairline. Eventually, the awkward vibe mellowed, and as they sipped the tea Mahiru had prepared, Chidose asked Amane what kind of chocolates he liked, since she wanted to give him some as well. Amane said he preferred something that wasn't too sweet, and warned Chidose not to add any weird stuff inside it. Chidose assured him that he would love whatever she gave him and then asked Mahiru if she was giving anyone chocolates. Mahiru answered that she would only give some to the girls in her class and Chidose because if she gave any to the boys, they would become delusional. Chidose agreed and promised to give her chocolates as well, saying they would be real chocolates, unlike what she planned to give Amane. Amane immediately complained, so she assured him they would be at least edible. When Valentine's Day came, all the girls in Amane's class flocked to Katawaki's side, blessing him with chocolates. This made the other boys visibly jealous, but Amane and Itsuki couldn't care less since it had been the same routine since they were young. When Amane said he'd never understand the hype of receiving chocolates, Itsuki told him to brace himself for Chidose's special chocolates. To Amane, that sounded more like a threat than a warning, so he demanded to know what the unhinged she-devil was plotting. Itsuki happily revealed that she'd made something called Russian chocolate, explaining that it was basically Russian roulette in chocolate form. However, instead of bullets, she put habanero peppers, pickled plums, and wasabi into some of the chocolates. Amane instantly became worried for his tongue, but Itsuki brushed it off and asked whether Amane would receive chocolates from Mahiru. Amane said he didn't know because Mahiru wasn't obligated to give him any chocolates. Hours later, school was over, and Chidose happily presented Amane with the chocolates she'd made for him. After he accepted them, she promised that he'd love them, but neither of the boys believed her. Deciding that was their problem, Chidose said goodbye and walked away. So Itsuki wished Amane good luck and chased after her. Now alone, Amane looked up and noticed that Katawaki was still sitting at his desk. It was obvious he didn't know what to do with all his chocolates, so Amane approached him and offered him a shopping bag. The boy was surprised by the kind gesture, but he accepted it and thanked Amane. That night, Amane decided to taste Chidose's chocolates against his better judgment and started regretting it after the first bite. Seeing this, Mahiru offered him a cup of hot chocolate to rinse out the bad taste, and he thanked her. However, he noticed she was acting strangely, so he asked what was wrong. Mahiru suddenly became shy and ran off, saying she had things to do back at home. Confused, Amane tried to go after her but stopped when he noticed the bag she had left hanging on the door. On it was a note, thanking him for all he'd done for her. And when he looked inside, he saw a box of orangettes. Intrigued, Amane immediately bit into one and was glad that Mahiru had saved his palate. The next day at school, Katawaki approached Amane to thank him for the help Amane had rendered. The unusual interaction sparked conversations among their classmates, but the boys ignored them. After Katawaki walked away, Itsuki approached Amane and asked when they became buddies. Amane explained what happened, but the only thing Itsuki picked up was the fact that he had a shopping bag inside his bag. Amane said it was a force of habit, but Itsuki teased him. saying it was because of Mahiru. Somehow, the conversation shifted to Chidose's inability to do house chores without messing things up. Itsuki claimed it was part of her charm and said she'd have figured it out by the time they got married. At the mention of marriage, Amane reminded Itsuki that his father didn't approve of his relationship with Chidose. Itsuki said his old man's approval didn't matter because he loved Chidose, and with time, he'd make the man see how awesome she was. Amane wished him luck, and Itsuki wished him the same, hinting that it was time for Amane to try and riz Mahiru. Later, when Amane returned home, he found Mahiru waiting for him, so he thanked her for the orangettes. When he asked what she wanted in return, Mahiru told him that he didn't have to repay her, but Amane insisted that he had to. After much persuasion, she agreed, so he promised he'd get her something she would love on White Day. As they talked some more, Mahiru asked when Amane's birthday was, and he told her it was on November 8th. Immediately, her eyes narrowed into slits, and she asked why he hadn't told her before. Because they were already acquainted at that time. Amane explained that he didn't think it was necessary, because they were just getting to know each other at the time. Mahiru agreed, but insisted that they would celebrate his next birthday together, so Amane started teasing her. Flustered, Mahiru hit him with her pillow and told him to stop making fun of her. A few days later, Amane went to a jewelry shop and asked the staff for help to pick out a White Day present. The woman assumed it was for his girlfriend, but Amane clarified that it was for a close friend. When White Day came around, he dressed nicely, which was something Mahiru wasn't used to. He explained that he didn't want to look shabby for such a special occasion, but said he could change if she didn't like it. Mahiru assured him that she liked what she saw, so he handed her the gift, and she thanked him. When she opened it, she was surprised to see a bracelet and a hand-drawn ticket for anything she wanted from him. She then asked him to put the bracelet on for her, and after he did, he continued staring at her for a few seconds more. The next day, he went out with Itsuki, and the boy noticed the change in Amane, but Amane kept denying it. When he got home later, Mahiru welcomed him, but wasn't happy to learn that he'd eaten junk food. When she began complaining, he grabbed her hand to make a point, but then dropped it because he thought it was inappropriate. Mahiru assured him that she didn't mind him touching her, but Amane still felt awkward, so he asked where her bracelet was. Mahiru told him that she had removed it because she was doing chores. She then thanked him for all the things he'd gotten for her. However, Amane suddenly rushed to his room to hide because her cuteness was making it hard for him to breathe. A few days later, Itsuki fought with his dad over Chidose, so he asked Amane if he could stay with him for a few days since spring break started the next day. Amane agreed and texted Mahiru to let her know they would have a guest. When they got home later, Mahiru welcomed them, and Itsuki apologized for crashing their love nest. This made Amane stomp on his foot, so Mahiru scolded him for mistreating the poor boy, and he couldn't even argue. A little while later, they sat down to eat, and Itsuki told Amane that he was the luckiest guy on earth because he got to eat such delicious food every day. Amane didn't even try to deny it, and commended Mahiru for another job well done. Later on, as the boys lay in Amane's room, Itsuki told Amane that his love meter had picked up on his feelings for Mahiru. Amane assured him that his meter was off, but Itsuki said he couldn't fool him and pointed out things he'd noticed. The first was that, despite him being an antisocial loser, Mahiru still hung out with him and treated him like he mattered. Secondly, they trusted each other wholeheartedly and were in sync most of the time. Amane still tried to dispute these facts, so Itsuki advised him to take his time and properly examine his relationship with Mahiru. The next day, Amane got a call from Chidose, who said it was unfair that Itsuki was living in his house and eating Amane's food without her. Amane told her that she was barking up the wrong tree and said that if she was that desperate to eat Mahiru's food again, she should call her. It wasn't surprising that the dumb girl hadn't thought to do that before, so she hung up and did just that. Hours later, she showed up at Amane's apartment with an overnight bag and told him that she would spend the night at Mahiru's place. Knowing how Chidose was, Amane immediately deduced that she'd left Mahiru no chance to refuse her. When he started complaining, Mahiru told him to chill out and assured him that she didn't mind having Chidose over. Amane had his doubts, but he agreed to drop the issue and asked what they were having for lunch. Mahiru told him it was amorous because Chidose had specifically asked for it. For the first time, Amane appreciated a decision Chidose made and told Mahiru that he couldn't wait to eat it because her amorous was the best. Mahiru immediately started blushing, and the couple who'd been watching their interaction from the side wondered how long they were going to remain in denial for. After lunch, Chidose began glazing Mahiru, so Amane advised her to take a few cooking and self-improvement lessons from Mahiru. Chidose immediately said she'd pass on the self-improvement lessons because even though she adored Mahiru, the girl was a little too uptight. At school, she always kept to herself, and if not for the fact that everyone was mesmerized by her beauty and brains, they would have publicly tagged her the Queen of Snobs. She said it wasn't until she started talking and hanging out with Mahiru that she realized she'd had the wrong idea about Mahiru. Suddenly, she hugged Mahiru and told her that if she played her cards right, she could turn Amane into a bigger simp than Gojo stands. Mahiru told her that she would never take advantage of Amane like that, so Chitose dropped the issue. Later, after Amane got out of the shower, he received a photo of Mahiru holding her teddy bear from Chitose, and he became flustered. Seeing this, Itsuki snapped a photo of him and sent it to Chitose to show Mahiru, since the two had decided to play Cupid. The next day, Itsuki went home with Chitose because he didn't want to keep imposing on Amane. That same week, Amane was returning home when he came across Mahiru talking to an unfamiliar woman in front of her apartment. Curious about who the woman was, he hid by the stairs and listened in on their conversation. The woman angrily told Mahiru that she was a thorn in her flesh and kept complaining, which made Amane feel bad for Mahiru. After the woman left, Amane approached Mahiru to see if she was okay, and Mahiru told her she was. Apparently, the woman was her mother, and it was the normal routine for her to talk down to her daughter. When Mahiru tried to walk into her apartment, Amane grabbed her hand and took her to his place because he knew she was sad. Once they were settled in, Mahiru told him her history, and it wasn't a nice one. Her parents were forced to get married because their families had a mutual interest, so they agreed never to have any offspring. However, something happened between them, and Mahiru was born. Since they never wanted her in the first place, she was placed in a nanny's care and spent most of her time trying to get her parents' attention. Unfortunately, nothing she did worked, and they continued neglecting her. The only reason they hadn't gotten divorced yet was that none of them wanted to be forced to keep her. So they decided to wait until she finished school to get the divorce they had been dreaming of. Her mother had revealed all of this to her on that day. Amane found her in the playground, which was why she looked all depressed. Amane couldn't believe what he'd heard, but despite his anger towards her parents, all he wanted to do was make Mahiru feel better. So he draped a blanket over her head and hugged her as she cried her heart out. When she came off her emotional roller coaster, she tried to act as though things were the same, but Amane told her that she didn't have to pretend. He said it was okay for her to be vulnerable in front of him and offered to provide all the support she needed because he saw her for who she was. Overwhelmed by his words and kindness, Mahiru hugged Amane again. Later, he noticed she was acting all shy, so he asked why, and she admitted it was a bit embarrassing that he had seen her in that state. Amane said it wasn't a big deal and reminded her of what he'd said earlier, so she relaxed and asked him to take a walk with her. As they walked around the park, she asked Amane how he felt about the upcoming semester. He said that the thought of changing classes was depressing, but Mahiru said she was actually excited about it. Amane asked whether it was because they might end up in the same class, but she refused to respond. Because of that, they continued their walk in silence until Mahiru suddenly hugged Amane from behind and thanked him for everything he'd done for her. Amane tried to look at her, but she pleaded with him to keep looking forward and said everything she wanted to say. When she finished, she let go of him and admitted that she never liked cherry blossoms or springtime because she was always alone. Amane told her to stop dwelling on the past and move forward with him by her side. Eventually, the day of the new semester arrived, and Itsuki asked Amane if he was excited to be in the same class as Mahiru. As you'd expect, he acted like he didn't care, yet Mahiru caught him staring at her. Just then, Katawaki, who was also in the same class, approached Amane to greet him, but for some reason, he was reminded of a guy from his past and suddenly became depressed. He remained that way even after school, so Mahiru asked what the problem was. Amane assured her that it was nothing serious, but his face still said otherwise. When Mahiru kept staring at him, he asked if his face card had finally mesmerized her, and she told him to keep dreaming. It turned out that she'd been looking at his hair and asked if she could touch it, which surprised him. Nevertheless, he agreed, so she asked him to put his head on her lap. This was another surprising request, so he hesitated before complying. As she began stroking his hair, Amane asked what she'd do if he attempted to do something inappropriate. Mahiru answered that she wasn't worried because he was far too lazy to do anything at all. As she continued what she was doing, he wondered if she was trying to cheer him up, as though she had heard his thoughts. Mahiru spoke up, saying it was Chitose who told her that stroking a guy's head would make him feel better. Amane warned her against taking advice from Chitose, as the girl wouldn't hesitate to give her bad advice. As she continued stroking his hair, she asked what he thought about their new class arrangements. Amane admitted he hadn't expected them to end up in the same class, but now that they had, they needed to be extra careful so no one found out about them. Mahiru didn't seem to like this, so she pulled his cheek and told him to at least pretend like he was bummed out about keeping his distance from her. She then said that she didn't mind as long as they didn't treat each other like strangers when they were alone. Soon, Amane fell asleep, and when he woke up later, he found Mahiru staring down at him. Immediately, he moved out of her lap and asked how long he'd been asleep for. Mahiru told him it was for an hour and said he'd look cute while he was asleep. Being a tough guy, he refused to accept it, so Mahiru pulled his cheek again and told him that being a tsundere didn't suit him. Amane was so embarrassed that after she let go of him, he turned away and started sulking. The next day after school, he stopped by the arcade in the mall and played with the claw machines. When he returned home later, Mahiru was surprised to see that he had a bag full of stuffed animals. After dinner, he joined her in the living room where she was admiring the animals, so she thanked him for winning them for her. When he kept staring at her, she became flustered and told him to knock it off, but Amane said he couldn't help it because she looked cute. He then started patting her head, hoping to calm her down, and it did. But she suddenly asked what he wanted in return for the gifts. Amane told him that she didn't have to give him anything, but Mahiru insisted that it was the least she could do to repay him for everything he'd done. Seeing how adamant she was being, Amane gave in and told her that he'd like some egg rice pudding. Mahiru thought he was just playing it safe, but he agreed to make him the pudding anyway. The next day, she went to the supermarket to buy the ingredients she needed, and when Amane tasted the finished product, he praised her cooking. He also threw in a few compliments, and when the glazing became too much, the flustered girl got up to clean the kitchen. However, Amane pulled her back and said he'd clean up for her, so she went to bury her face into the sofa. The next day, Katawaki approached Amane and Itsuki and asked if they wanted to have lunch with him. The boys thought it was strange that he suddenly started acting friendly towards them, so he explained that he just wanted to be friends. Itsuki immediately accepted him, but Amane was still skeptical, so he asked if Katawaki was sure he wanted to join the loser wagon. Katawaki reaffirmed his reason and assured him that he was prepared to go all in, so Amane stopped interrogating him. Just then, he looked up and noticed that Mahiru was watching them, but the girl didn't look happy. So when they were hanging out after school, he asked why she was puffing up her cheeks like a squirrel. Mahiru admitted that she was jealous of everyone who got to speak and hang out with him at school. Amane asked if she would be completely fine if people found out that she was friends with someone like him, and that pissed her off. She reminded him that he wasn't supposed to put himself down for any reason, so he apologized, saying he didn't want things to be weird for her. Mahiru assured him that nothing would happen if they started speaking to each other at school, and suggested that they begin slowly. The opportunity presented itself the next day when their teacher asked them to form groups for their cooking project. Mahiru didn't hesitate to team up with Amane, Itsuki, and Chitose, and their classmates started whispering among themselves. After school, they met to plan their menu, and Chitose started teasing Amane for trying to take charge. She pointed out that he was the most useless in the kitchen, but Amane said he could make an omelet. Mahiru revealed that his so-called omelet was actually scrambled eggs, which tasted like cardboard. Days later, they held the cooking practical, and Chitose noticed that Amane and Mahiru were in sync. When she kept staring at them, they told her to focus on her task, so she did. Soon enough, the food was ready, so Amane and Mahiru went to get the salad from the fridge. On their way back, Amane quickly pulled Mahiru out of the way to avoid soup splashing on her because some of their classmates decided to joke around. He then scolded them for their recklessness, surprising everyone because they had never seen him act that way before. When they returned to Itsuki and Chitose, the latter teased Amane for acting all protective with Mahiru. Amane said it was the only way to ensure those idiots would never realize they had done something wrong. That night, Mahiru told him that she couldn't wait until they could talk freely in public, so Amane teased her a bit. However, he promised to try his best and patted her head to comfort her. Sometime later, Amane and Mahiru discussed the upcoming Golden Week, and Mahiru said she didn't know what to do with all that free time. Amane asked if she'd canceled her cooking plans with Chitose, and she told him it was still on, though only for a day. Amane said he could relate to how she felt because he had nothing planned at all, so she turned in her anything you want ticket. She asked if he could give her one of his Golden Weekdays, since she wanted to go shopping and hang out afterwards. Amane told her that she didn't need to use her ticket to hang out with him, but Mahiru said it was something she needed to do. Seeing as she wouldn't give in, Amane relented, and they started talking about the places they could visit. Amane shyly admitted that he'd always wanted to go to a cat cafe. Mahiru thought it was a good idea, and said they could visit an arcade after. The following week, Chitose came over for her cooking lesson, and as usual, she and Amane couldn't resist throwing shades at each other. Since they were using his kitchen to practice, Mahiru had promised to make him something. But Amane didn't trust that Chitose wouldn't put something weird in it. Chitose promised him that the meal would be an upgrade from the Russian chocolates, but he remained skeptical. As Mahiru began teaching Chitose, Amane watched them for a while, but then he fell asleep. When he woke up later, he was surprised to see that he'd been resting on Mahiru's shoulder. She told him that he leaned into her when she sat down, so he quickly apologized. Mahiru tried to explain that she wasn't blaming him, but Chitose cleared her throat, reminding them that she was still in the room. She then started teasing them about being all cozy with each other, but Amane skillfully stirred the conversation away from that. He asked if she'd done anything to him while he was asleep, and she told him that messing with him was only fun when he was awake. Eventually, the trio sat down to eat, and when they finished, Chitose took the leftovers and went home. Now alone, Amane and Mahiru went to sit on the couch, and Mahiru admitted that she was the one who messed with him while he was asleep. She said she played with his cheeks and hair, but it was only because he looked cute. Amane pointed out that those things didn't count as a prank because he also liked touching her cheeks and hair. The next moment, he touched her cheek, causing her to become flustered, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she reminded him that they would be spending the next day together and asked whether he would prefer her to dress casually or as if she were going to the Met Gala. Amane didn't think it mattered, but when she kept insisting, he chose casual. The next day, when Mahiru showed up at Amane's front door, he was left speechless, as she put in the effort to look good. Thankfully, he remembered his manners and complimented her before they headed out. The first place they visited was the cat cafe, but when Mahiru tried playing with one of the cats, it walked away, leaving her feeling sad. Amane explained that cats needed time to get used to people and assured her that the cat would eventually become friendly toward her. He then bought her a chocolate drink with a cat design, but Mahiru said it was too cute, so she couldn't bring herself to drink it. Amane managed to convince her to drink it, and the moment she did, he took a photo of her foam-covered mouth. Mahiru immediately complained about this, but he assured her that she looked cute, so she let him keep it. After that, they went to sit down, and even though Mahiru had a cat on her lap, she couldn't help but stare at the one in Amane's lap because it was the one she had first approached. Amane told her that the cat reminded him of her, but Mahiru couldn't understand why. He then explained that, just as the cat was wary of him when they first met, she dropped her guard after getting to know him. Mahiru started pouting and asked if he'd been treating her as a cat all this time, but he denied it. Eventually, they left the cafe, and as they walked around the mall, Amane spotted a dress on display. He told Mahiru that it would look good on her and encouraged her to go in and try it. While she was getting dressed, two girls approached him and tried to convince him to hang out with them. Amane was in the process of turning them down when Mahiru suddenly linked hands with him, as though she was staking her claim. Amane could do nothing as she dragged him away, but from her expression, he knew she wasn't happy. So to make it up to her, he won a stuffed cat from the claw machine when they got to the arcade and gave it to her. Mahiru happily accepted the gift and promised to care for it like the other stuffed animals he won for her. Seeing her expression pushed Amane to pat her head, but before he could, Katawaki suddenly appeared. Since it looked like they were on a date, he assumed they were in a relationship, so they had to explain their situation to him over drinks. They also asked him not to tell anyone at school, and he assured them that his lips were sealed. After they parted ways, Mahiru and Amane decided to head home. But while waiting for the train, Amane started apologizing. He blamed himself for Katawaki seeing them, but Mahiru pointed out that they had been in a public place. Despite this, Amane continued blaming himself, and when he began speaking badly about himself again, she lost it. His lack of self-confidence and the constant self-sabotage were something she couldn't understand, so she asked whether something in his past had made him that way, but Amane refused to say anything. The next day, he went to a karaoke bar with Itsuki and Katawaki began interrogating him. He believed that Amane had feelings for Mahiru but couldn't understand why Mahiru was refusing to acknowledge them. Instead of trying to deny like he always did, Amane asked if there would be a problem if he did have feelings for Mahiru. Later that day, when he got home, he noticed Mahiru acting strangely and trying to hide her phone. When he asked what happened, she admitted she was looking at the photos his mom had sent her. Immediately, he tried to take the phone away because, knowing his mother, she sent the most embarrassing photos she had. As they struggled for possession of the phone, Amane fell on top of Mahiru, creating the perfect atmosphere for a kiss. However, instead of doing that, he pinched her cheek, and the girl became disappointed. She then handed him the phone and secretly touched her lips, as though she was mourning the almost kiss. Days later, Amane and Mahiru sat in his living room discussing Mother's Day. Amane told her that he'd send some flowers to his mom since he wasn't at home to celebrate with her. Amane asked how the celebration usually went when he was home, and he said he'd help his mom with chores. The only problem was that he was so bad at it that he often just created more work for them. Mahiru wasn't surprised since the boy was useless with chores, but she did wonder why his parents trusted him to live on his own, knowing how he was. Amane froze after hearing this, as another memory resurfaced in his mind, but he quickly pushed it away. Then he told Mahiru there was a specific reason he couldn't go home. Mahiru deduced that it had something to do with his self-hate, and he indirectly confirmed it by saying there were some guys he didn't want to see again. When he tried to assure her that he was over it, Mahiru called him a liar and said that if he were over it, he wouldn't act like that. Seeing how concerned she was, Amane decided to tell her what had happened in his hometown that made him move. He said his parents gave him all the love and support he needed growing up, so he learned to do the same for others. He was also very trusting, so he never once assumed the worst about people until the day he learned that those he called friends didn't see him the same way. They only hung out with him because of money and never once saw him as their equal. After that day, he started distrusting people, which affected his genuine relationships, and when he couldn't take it anymore, he decided to leave. Hearing his story made Mahiru very angry, but there was nothing she could do except offer him her support. Amane told her that she didn't have to do anything because she was already doing more than enough. But Mahiru insisted that he let her be his emotional support and pulled his head to her chest. She then began patting his head comfortingly as she told him he could confide in her about anything. She also said some other things which stuck with him, so he wrapped his arms around her as a sort of acceptance. Eventually, things calmed down, but then Amane started feeling embarrassed that she'd seen his vulnerable side. Mahiru tried to tell him that it didn't matter, but the stubborn boy didn't agree, so she got to leave. Immediately, he got up and hugged her from behind, which shocked her, but he refused to let go until he clarified things. After she went into the kitchen, he sat on the couch looking all flustered. The next day at school, some girls approached Mahiru and asked if the rumors they heard about her walking around the mall with a guy were true. Mahiru confirmed that she did go to the mall with a guy, and when they asked who he was to her, she said he was someone very dear to her. Everyone who heard her response was surprised, including Amane. So after school, he asked if she meant what she had said. Mahiru told him that it was and explained that since meeting him, he'd become the person she was closest to. Amane pointed out that people would get the wrong idea because of the way she phrased her answer, and Mahiru admitted she'd done it on purpose. If she had dodged the question, it would have fueled the rumors, and things would have got out of hand. However, now that she'd said what she said, they had more control over the situation. Later, after dinner, Amane informed Mahiru that he would spend most of his free time training. Curious, she asked what inspired his training arc, and he told her he wanted to keep fit. Mahiru started teasing him and said that if he ever felt tired, he could come to her, and she would do whatever he wanted as long as it was within her power. In exchange, he would do something she wanted, and Amane agreed. To test the waters, she asked him to pat her head, saying she liked it when he touched her, and bro's mind went places. Because of that, he had a surprisingly mellow plot dream about Mahiru. But when he woke up, he discovered that his mind wasn't the only one that enjoyed the dream. Later at school, Chitose noticed that he looked dazed, but when she asked what the problem was, he claimed he was just tired from his run. After she walked away, Mahiru tried to encourage him, but he responded coldly. Worried that she might have done something wrong, she approached him at home and asked why he was angry with her. Amane said he wasn't angry, but the tone of his voice begged to differ. This convinced Mahiru that she had indeed done something to piss him off, and when she started sulking, Amane felt bad, so he had no choice but to tell her about the dream, and said he'd been avoiding her all day because he didn't want to see the sequel yet. Mahiru found this amusing, so she asked a few questions to tease him, and then told him that he was the most innocent person she'd ever met. Flustered, he admitted she was the first girl he'd ever been that close to, and Mahiru said she was glad, which just worsened his condition. Seeing this, she rested her back against his and promised not to look at him until he relaxed. The following week, the test timetable was posted at school, so when Amane returned home, he informed Mahiru that Itsuki and Katawaki were coming over the next day for a study session. Mahiru said she'd prepare some food, and then asked if she could join them, to which he said yes. When he asked if she wanted to invite Chitose, Mahiru admitted that she'd already invited the girl. It turned out that she'd begged Mahiru to tutor her because her grades were very low and her parents would have her head if she failed. Amane wasn't surprised, since Chitose had always been dramatic. Mahiru then sat opposite Amane and asked why he was suddenly being serious about studying. Amane told her that he believed that getting better grades would boost his confidence. Impressed, Mahiru decided to motivate him further by promising to grant any wish he had if he made it to the top 10 after their test. This took him by surprise, so he said he wanted to rest her head on her lap again, and she agreed, even promising to clean his ears as a bonus. The next day, Chitose arrived with the boys for the study session, and Katawaki was surprised to see how easily Mahiru fit into the place. Eventually, they kicked off the study session and rounded it off with the meal Mahiru made. Days later, the test results were posted, and when Mahiru saw that Amane placed 6th, she congratulated him and jokingly asked him to reward himself. Her words triggered the memory of her promise to him, so she played along, asking if she would reward herself for placing first. Mahiru said it wasn't a bad idea, but claimed she didn't need to do it. Later at home, Amane asked Mahiru if there was anything she wanted, So the girl put him to work as her assistant in the kitchen. As they worked, she told him she didn't need anything new because she was satisfied with how things were. Later, Mahiru asked Amane to get his reward, but he hesitated because he felt his request was a bit selfish and unreasonable. Mahiru told him that she didn't mind and promised to pamper him because he deserved it for working hard. After she said this, Amane stopped hesitating and lay in her lap, allowing her to begin fulfilling her promise to him. When it was time for her to do his other ear, he hesitated again, as he knew he would have to face her crotch. However, he decided to stop acting like a prude and kept his eyes closed as he turned. Mahiru seemed to notice this, so she smiled and asked if she could play with his hair when she was done. He told her to do whatever she wanted, and that was what she did. As she stroked his hair, she said she liked him more when he acted all obedient and shy, prompting him to ask when their relationship became 50 shades of gray-coated. When she ignored the question, he admitted he liked touching her hair because it was soft. However, he tried to avoid doing it because he didn't want her to think he was a creep. Mahiru assured him that she would never think that way because she liked it when he touched her. As expected, he was shocked by her response and wondered how long it would take for his cultured mind to conjure up another lewd production. Eventually, he fell asleep. And when he woke up later, Mahiru was still with him, but she'd also fallen asleep. Amane tried to wake her up so she could go home, but the girl didn't respond because she was too sleepy. Seeing this, he managed to coax her into letting him enter her apartment. After he put her to bed, she opened her eyes, so he told her that he'd return her key, but she didn't really care. Instead, she asked him to lie next to her, which surprised him more than anything. However, he patted her head and told her that he couldn't do that. When she tried to complain, he placed her teddy bear beside her and promised it would watch over her. Mahiru immediately snuggled against it, so he covered her with her blanket. The next morning, an embarrassed Mahiru went over to Amane's place, and he assumed she'd come because of her key. Mahiru nervously told him that wasn't the reason, but he still went to grab the key and gave it to her. He then waited to hear what she wanted to say, and Mahiru asked if he'd seen the picture she had on her desk. He said he hadn't looked around and asked if there was a problem, to which she responded that there wasn't, and she looked a little relieved. That is, until he mentioned that he placed her teddy bear beside her because she'd asked him to lie beside her. Mahiru couldn't believe that she'd made such a bold request and began freaking out. Things only got worse when he described how she'd made the request, so she tried to convince him that her actions were influenced by sleep and not a secret desire to make plot with him. Amane told her that it was fine, but said what wasn't fine was how easily she'd let her guard down and fallen asleep on the couch with him. Realizing what he was trying to say, Mahiru argued that it was fine since she knew he wouldn't take advantage of her, but Amane reminded her that he was still a healthy young man. This made her ask if the warning also applied to him since he had fallen asleep on her lap. Amane began stuttering like an idiot as he argued that it wasn't the same thing, but Mahiru told him not to be so sure. For all he knew, she could have taken weird photos of him while he slept. Amane agreed that she could have, but still argued that they were talking about different things, so Mahiru gave up and left. The next morning, when Amane walked out of his room, Mahiru was standing there in her summer uniform. She apologized for bothering him so early in the morning, but said she needed his opinion on her outfit. Amane then took a good look at her, but when he noticed her exposed legs, he suddenly became flustered and turned away. When Mahiru asked what the problem was, he told her not to leave home without wearing stockings. The girl couldn't understand why and began complaining, so he pointed out that her legs were a bit enticing. At this, Mahiru began teasing him, and when she stopped, she admitted that she'd come over like that to see how he'd react. Realizing he'd been played, Amane decided to turn the tables around, and in a matter of seconds, Mahiru was the flustered and shy one. However, she still asked what he thought of her outfit, and he admitted that she looked cute. Later at school, Amane tried to ignore the looks Mahiru was getting from their classmates, but Itsuki made sure to tease him about it. Hours later, school was over, and after Itsuki and Chitose left for a date, Katawaki and Amane decided to go hang out somewhere. However, they ran into Mahiru outside the classroom and decided to stay because they learned she was stapling printouts for the upcoming sports festival. While they worked, Mahiru apologized for stealing their free time, but Amane assured her that they were there of their own free will. Just then, they heard voices in the hallway, and when it became clear they were gossiping and bad-mouthing Mahiru, Amane got pissed. Surprisingly, Mahiru showed no signs that what she'd heard affected her, so when they got home later, he asked if she was truly okay. Mahiru told him that she honestly didn't care if people badmouthed her because they didn't know who she really was. All they had to go on was what she showed them, and that was fine by her, as she wasn't looking to please anyone. Amane still didn't think it was right for them to say things about her and pointed out that they were probably jealous because they believed she was dating Katawaki. Mahiru said that was their business because even if she were to date someone, it wouldn't be Katawaki, as he wasn't her type. Hearing this, Amane relaxed a little and admitted that he didn't want others to know the real her, prompting her to tease him about being jealous. Flustered, Amane didn't deny it, but he did tell her that if she didn't stop teasing him, he would shut her up himself. Mahiru grabbed his face and told him that his macho man act didn't scare her because he was no different from a cute puppy. She also said she saw something special in him, and when she kept staring into his eyes, Amane pushed her against the couch. He then covered her mouth and told her the next time she said something like that, he'd shut her up with a kiss. When he pulled away, Mahiru suddenly pulled him back and kissed his cheek, after which she ran out of the apartment. On the other hand, Amane didn't move from where he was because he was too stunned by what happened. The next day at school, Chidose asked Mahiru what event she was participating in for the upcoming sports day. Mahiru said she was considering the scavenger race, and Chidose told her to go for it because she was the committee member in charge of that event. Just then, Amane walked in, and while everyone greeted him, Mahiru didn't say a word to him, which made their friends curious. So, during lunch break, Itsuki and Katawaki asked Amane if he and Mahiru had fought. Amane explained that it was more of a misunderstanding than a fight and that they were keeping their distance because they didn't know how to handle the situation. Itsuki told him that the answer was simple, but Katawaki pointed out that, being who he was, Amane would probably keep sulking until Mahiru gave him a clear signal. That promoted Amane to admit that he kept getting mixed signals from Mahiru, which made it even harder for him to act. His friends told him not to drag things out, explaining that it would only make things more complicated. After school, Mahiru went to see Amane and apologized for leaving abruptly the previous day. Amane said he wasn't angry with her, just curious about why she kissed him out of the blue. She admitted it was to get back at him for teasing her before, and all the arguments he had prepared went out the window. The next day, they learned which teams they were on for sports day, and Chidose wasn't happy about it because Itsuki was on the opposing team. When Itsuki tried to comfort her, Amane told them to get a room because he hadn't signed up to watch them act all lovey-dovey. After school, he and Mahiru were home as usual, so he asked what events she was partaking in. Mahiru said the relay and scavenger race, and when she asked what he picked, he told her the bag toss and scavenger race. She immediately pointed out that he picked the less stressful ones, and Amane admitted that his laziness wouldn't allow him to participate in other events. As they continued talking about the sports event, he cracked open a tub of ice cream and began eating it. However, he got carried away by the discussion that he didn't realize he was feeding Mahiru his ice cream until after a while. Slightly panicked, he gave her the remaining ice cream and got up to make himself some coffee instead. The following week, the sports day kicked off, and all the students were hyped. During the relay race, Amane was surprised to see Chidose on the track, so Katawaki explained that the girl was the female Usain Bolt. She just never joined the track team because she didn't want to get into trouble with a senior who had a thing for Itsuki. After winning the race, Chidose returned to her friends, and Itsuki kept praising her for almost breaking the sound barrier. Amane then said he was going to prepare for the scavenger race, so Chidose told him he was in for a surprise. She also refused to offer any explanation for what she said and rushed off to the committee booth. When the race started, Mahiru came to him and asked him to come with her because the thing written on her card was related to him. Amane agreed because she could also help him fulfill the requirements for his card. After they crossed the finish line, Chidose took their cards and read the instructions aloud. Amane's card had asked him to bring someone beautiful, and Mahiru's card had asked her to bring someone dear to her. Everyone, including Amane, was surprised that Mahiru had picked Amane, but the girl just kept smiling. Later, their classmates gathered around Amane, demanding to know why Mahiru had chosen him. Amane told them he and Mahiru were just friends, but they didn't believe him, since their interactions at school were limited. They kept complaining that Mahiru and Amane had nothing in common, and he agreed. However, he pointed out that it didn't change the fact that they were close friends, which pissed them off even more. Amane didn't, and he told them that the Mahiru they knew wasn't the Mahiru he knew. Just then, Mahiru walked in and asked the boys to stop harassing Amane because what he told them was true. One of the boys then asked what was special about someone like Amane, and that question ticked Mahiru off. Amane noticed and tried to do damage control, but Mahiru handled things on her own. She schooled the ignorant boy on how to mind his business and stopped throwing shades at someone he'd never spoken to in his life. She also praised Amane, highlighting the things she loved about him and his good traits. When she finished, the boys felt ashamed and walked away, so Mahiru asked Amane to eat with her. Mahiru's actions replayed in Amane's mind for the rest of the day, and eventually, he decided he'd confess his feelings for her. However, that was easier said than done. And as he sat in his living room wondering how to do it, Mahiru walked in. She apologized for what happened at school and for her role in it, but Amane assured her he wasn't angry with her. He He said he was actually glad that she'd revealed their relationship because he was too much of a coward to do it. He also admitted that he'd known about her feelings for him but chose to act clueless because he was afraid. However, he was done pretending and wanted to accept her feelings because he wanted her to accept his as well. He then pulled her closer, and after reminiscing about their time together, he asked if she'd be his girlfriend. He promised he'd become a better version of himself so that people wouldn't mock her for dating a loser. He also said some other moving stuff, which he didn't need to say because Mahiru didn't think twice about saying yes to being his girlfriend. Do you think Mahiru's admirers would accept Amane as her partner, or would they continue hating on him? If you got this far, comment Simp Supremacy. Also, check out this next video.